Tonight, the death toll rising, and Helene now the deadliest hurricane to hit the mainland U.S. since Katrina.
Downtown Marshall, North Carolina was swallowed by catastrophic flooding. Now what remains is covered in a thick coat of mud and debris that's considered hazardous.
We are surging search and rescue teams to help rescue people who are still stranded but can't communicate because cell phone service is down.
When Hurricane Helene ripped through the southeastern U.S. in September 2024, it left a trail of destruction that shocked even seasoned storm watchers. Helene was no ordinary hurricane. It was the most powerful storm ever recorded in Florida's Big Bend and the deadliest to hit the mainland since Hurricane Katrina in 2005. But the worst of the devastation wasn't even near the coast. Torrential rains flooded areas hundreds of miles inland, causing chaos in unexpected places, and there is more coming. Just how much damage did this monster storm unleash? Stay tuned, it's more terrible than you imagine. It started as a whisper in the Caribbean, a low-pressure system lurking over warm waters on September 22nd. But within days, that whisper would become a scream. By September 24th, it had earned a name, Helene. What began as a tropical storm near the Yucatan Peninsula rapidly escalated, feeding on perfect conditions as it crossed into the Gulf of Mexico. By September 25th, Helene was already a hurricane, but the worst was yet to come. Within hours, it morphed into something far more dangerous. A Category 4 beast, packing winds up to 140 miles per hour at 3:10 a.m. on September 27th, Helene made landfall, slamming into Florida's Big Bend region with brutal force, becoming the most powerful hurricane to hit the area. Its wrath didn't end there. Storm surges tore through coastal towns, while the wind howled as far inland as Atlanta, knocking out power, ripping apart homes, and leaving devastation in its wake. But the real horror unfolded as Helene moved inland. Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina all faced the fury of a dying storm, unwilling to go quietly. Floodwater swallowed towns, rivers breached their banks, and terrifyingly, tornadoes spun off the hurricane, causing chaos. Entire communities were erased in hours, and by the time Helene's rage finally dissipated, on September 29th, more than 200 lives had been lost, families torn apart, homes gone, and nothing but wreckage left behind. Helene's wrath isn't just a human tragedy, it's a financial disaster too. The storm has left a staggering $30 billion in damages across the southeastern U.S., with agriculture alone taking a $7 billion hit. Many areas, like Buncombe County, weren't prepared. Out of 140,000 homes, only 941 had flood insurance. Rebuilding these communities, especially those without protection, is going to be a monumental challenge, but the nightmare isn't over. The National Hurricane Center has warned that another storm is brewing in the Gulf of Mexico, and Florida could be next. With destruction still fresh and recovery far from complete, the region faces yet another threat, and it's a nightmare no parent should ever face. Colette Zuby, on Tuesday, October the 1st, was informed that her daughter Samira, just 28 years old, was gone, claimed by Hurricane Helene's fury. Samira lived in Asheville, North Carolina, one of the areas hardest hit by the storm's devastation. Colette had last spoken to her daughter on Friday morning. The flooding had already risen to the second floor of Samira's apartment building, and she told her mother she was waiting for rescuers. But as hours passed, so did their chances. By the time rescuers arrived at 1 p.m., the floodwaters had climbed to the third floor. Chaos erupted as they tried to save trapped residents. Ropes were thrown in a desperate attempt to rescue those stranded. But the building began to shift. Samira, a graphic designer, couldn't grab hold of the ropes. The force of the water swept her away, disappearing in the flood's deadly current. For days, her family and boyfriend searched, hoping against hope. It wasn't until Monday night that her friend Molly received the news that shattered any last hopes. Samira's body had been found. This is just one of over 1,600 stories, still waiting for answers as families cling to fading hope. But why did North Carolina suffer so much devastation? More than 6 months' worth of rain poured down in just days as Hurricane Helene tore through the state. Western North Carolina, with its rugged mountains, felt the brunt of the storm's fury. Homes were swept away, bridges collapsed, and entire villages were reduced to rubble. Even Asheville, a bustling tourist hub, was cut off entirely from the outside world. Helene's wrath wasn't just from rain. She brought a storm surge over 15 feet high, smashing records that had stood for over a century. In some places, the devastation eclipsed the infamous Great Flood of 1916. The ground was already soaked from days of rain before the hurricane even arrived, making it impossible for the water to go anywhere but into homes, streets, and lives. And to make matters worse, Helene fed off the soaked ground, gaining strength from the brown ocean effect, refusing to weaken as it marched through the southeastern U.S., leaving chaos in its wake. The catastrophic damage from Hurricane Helene is also a brutal wake-up call. Climate scientists have been warning about this for years. As the planet heats up, storms are becoming deadlier and more extreme. And it's not just coastal cities at risk anymore. Devastating rainfall can strike far inland, hitting places that never thought they'd be in danger. But here's the most terrifying part. Hurricane Helene is not a one-off. When Helene barreled toward the U.S. coast, it was already classified as a Category 4 hurricane, a status defined by raw wind power alone. But what those numbers don't tell you is the real danger that lurks beneath. The rain. Take Hurricane Florence, for example. It only hit as a Category 1 storm, but that didn't stop it from drowning North Carolina with up to 30 inches of rain. And that was just the beginning. Fast forward to mid-September this year, and Wilmington, NC, was once again submerged with 20 inches of rain, turning streets into rivers. You see, it's not just about wind speed or where you live on a map. It's the relentless downpour, and it doesn't care how far you are from the coast. Take Asheville, for instance, a city tucked in the mountains, far from the ocean, where you'd think safety is assured. But those mountains act like nature's funnel, directing torrents of water straight into the river valleys, many of which are home to large swaths of the city. And when you've paved over the landscape, as cities do, there's nowhere for the rain to go. The water can flood places miles from the nearest river or lake, making it clear no one is safe. Just think about that. We're sinking billions into building roads, bridges, and entire city systems that may not be able to withstand the storms of tomorrow. And when those systems fail, it's not just an inconvenience, it's a matter of life and death. So, as we sit and wait for the next hurricane to make landfall, one thing is clear. Hurricane Helene is not an anomaly. It's a sign of things to come. And the question is, are we ready for it? Our hearts and prayers go out to all those still struggling to survive, to all those who tragically lost their lives, and to all those still missing. May you be found safe and returned to your families.